Well, thanks everybody for staying this late to talk about cost. So I am already very gratified to hear that. Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know. Neil and I have been chatting about this for a while, and it's just fascinating how this usually starts with some poor engineer just suddenly being presented with a very large cloud bill, and FinOps is born in your organization at that point. So I was just curious, Neil, like how did you end up starting up with FinOps?
It was 100% an accident. So I joined FanDuel in the summer of 2020, and just as a senior manager within the DevOps team at the time, and nobody was really owning the cloud spend at that time. The bill was kind of the responsibility of the DevOps team. I guess with FanDuel's growth over the past 5 years, with the sportsbook betting exploding, in various states and territories over the country, we've grown massively, and there came the point that critical mass was reached where the AWS bill just kept escalating and escalating and escalating, and then someone needed to manage it. And at that time, I was already managing the Datadog relationship and the associated costs with that, so it felt like a natural fit. It seems weird to think that we didn't really have a FinOps function before that. If you look at our revenues, they've kind of I think they've gone up tenfold in 5 years. So it took a while to even just establish the function, let alone get people adapting to a new way of thinking. Because I look at it as it's just another metric, right, that you can improve upon, and you can boil it down to a metric. I don't want to appear in a conversation, people go, "Oh no, it's the cost guy. Why is he speaking to me?" That can't be good, right? What have I done with my RDS cluster this week? It's got that negative connotation, but I don't see it like that. We need to understand and make people understand spending money is not a bad thing. If that number goes up every year, it's how you find the metric that shows you you're getting value. So I guess, I could say it's a bit of a cultural stereotype that Scottish people are a little bit tight and frugal with money. So, maybe it was a natural fit that way. But before I joined FanDuel, the previous organization that I was at, I sort of helped form their DevOps team, but kind of from the ground floor, again, cultural stereotype, they were Scottish, they didn't want to spend money either. So they always kept a very tight rein on the spend. So, you were always kind of by accident, they sort of had FinOps from the ground up. So it was an interesting challenge trying to, I guess, make people more aware at FanDuel.
Yeah, it sounds like it's always this reinvention. Maybe it's because FinOps is such a relatively new, I don't know if you should call it a field or a discipline, but in some ways, everybody's sort of inventing and trying to figure out how they navigate balancing these money things, right? So one of the things that I was kind of curious is you sort of have three major stakeholders. You have your engineers who are trying to do their job. You have management who are trying to direct the goal towards some business. And then there's a finance organization as well. And usually people in this field end up in the middle of that crowd. How do you think about establishing some sort of common language across these three stakeholders?
It is tough. I think, mentioning before about boiling things down to a metric. So, rather than just concentrating on the dollar value of your spend, we'd rather want the org-wide metric to be something like, say, what is the cost per 1,000 wagers that are placed on the platform, right? Because that means the same thing to people in finance. It means the same thing to engineers. It means the same thing to C-suite people. It's all something that they can get behind. If I go to, a finance person, it's like, okay, our EC2 bill is up this month because these new workloads were that means something to engineering, but it doesn't mean something to finance. They just see the number getting bigger. And, we're getting to that time of year where we want to project our 2024 spend. So they just look at the number as a raw thing and say, okay, right, this is up 300% year on year. Why is this? They want different explanations from, from say C-suite executives who just want to know, are we getting the value from it? I think we adopted at Dash last year when Datadog announced cloud cost management. That was fairly exciting for us because for anyone that's ever used Cost Explorer, it's fairly limited and awkward to use. It doesn't really allow you to enrich the data or decorate it. So, having like that data in Datadog was really exciting for us because, again, going back to talking about finding a common language, we have, I don't know, around 1,500 active Datadog users at the organization. So it's used across the org. It's not just engineering. It's used by product. It's used by C-suite. It's used by marketing. It's used by, lots of different verticals and domains within the business. So being in that familiar platform that people already know, I think at the keynote this morning, Jamie was talking about synthetic tests and using Bits AI it means that anyone can start. So, it doesn't need to be just your test team who are creating the tests. Something that was the preserve with few is now open to many. And I see similarities with cloud cost management, where previously you had a very small subset of people looking at the numbers in Cost Explorer, and it wasn't really accessible outside of that. But in Datadog, people already know the platform. They know how to get logs. They know how to look at metrics. And it just seems natural to add this to another metric that everyone can care about.
Yeah, it's completely echo that, right? I mean, even in our org, the interesting thing about making cost is just when the metric available is now everybody who can do something about the problem has access to the data, and it's just fascinating to see how much of a transformation that has across the thing, where engineers who previously would have had to balance between like I have to do this feature versus I have to cut costs, don't really think of them as two different things. How do you sort of see this constant tussle between reliability, time to market, and cost play out in your world? I mean,
yeah, it's a good question because like engineers, I guess their primary concern is make my workload perform well and make the end user experience as good as it possibly can be. I guess that oftentimes leads to the over provisioning of resources. Right sizing can be an issue, and then people get used to that as a benchmark. They say no, but we need this sizing, and it's difficult starting the conversation. I said at the top about it's the cost guy, but that's kind of the first challenge that you need to address because we've been. We started using cloud cost management, and obviously before that we still use Cost Explorer as well in AWS. But we're still in the organizational change part of the journey. So people are getting it. We're working through. We're getting all our resources tagged. I think that's probably the bit of advice. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and advise everyone tag early, tag everything, tag with things that you didn't think you need to tag. It just making people accountable for it. Like when we were a smaller org and DevOps took care of the cloud bill, that was fine. DevOps were the owners. Now we're 10 times bigger, and we need individual teams and individual domains to be accountable for their spend as well. So, like the last year, it feels almost like, I don't know, a political campaign. You need to basically like convince people that this is the right way forward, and get the votes in. Shaking hands, kissing babies, all that kind of stuff. It's so. Yeah, my job's twofold. I look at the numbers, and we look to see where we have wasted spend, where we can make improvements. But there's the constant promotion of this as a thing, and for not to be a negative thing. Again, I said previously about, if you're having a conversation about costs, historically, people wouldn't think that could be a positive conversation. It's usually you're spending too much money, we need to do something about it. But it's changing that mindset into asking the question, are we getting value for the money that we're spending? Not, why are we spending this much money? That should be the first question, not why is our total bill this size?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really like about the title of this thing is it's not just efficiency; it's efficiency and effectiveness, meaning you're getting the maximum for every dollar you spend. And what has been somewhat interesting is to start playing this semantic game of replacing cost with price, and what price are you willing to pay to go faster, or what price are you willing to pay? And suddenly, it's a very different conversation because you may not be paying enough, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you get this very it's not an adversarial relationship anymore with like the engineers in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're never, we're not adverse to spending on technology. We just need to know that we're getting the value. Any org's the same, right? You want to know you're getting your return on investment, right? So, but now we've got the tools, in the observability, single pane of glass. We hear the term all the time, but Datadog has become that for FanDuel. Like, we've been a customer of Datadog since 2014. So like the product set in 2014 was tiny compared to what it is now. But I don't know. I don't know if you bug the office, but you always seem to like introduce features that we talk about and we've been desiring at like a good cadence. I guess that's the other thing that we love about Datadog is that the rate of iteration and improvement is fairly rapid compared to other organizations. So, it just makes total sense for us getting it all under the one place.
I mean, it's actually easier than bugging. I mean, I tell people when we interview them, it's like, look, it's easy because we don't need to understand the demographic of the personas of the people. They're literally us, right? So we're kind of building. It's a fun job to build tools for yourself. So in some ways, and your point about single pane of glass is also interesting because as I was looking through most of the dashboards today, through the different demos, almost all of them have a cost number. And it's kind of an interesting, and that wasn't a constructed thing. It just happened automatically. The availability of this was very valuable for us. I'm curious, like, because this does come up on occasion, right? And like you often get the sort of, hey, I'm an engineer, why do I care about cost conversation? Like, do you have any pro tips on how you handle that?
Pro tips? Gosh. Yeah, that's. I should have prepared better for this. But
hey, Bits AI maybe has an answer for that. Don't worry.
Oftentimes it does come down to the personal relationship. I don't want to use the political campaign point too much, but yeah, I guess it's just you've just got to build that rapport. I mean, and be the approachable guy. We've started like calling out when we're making savings. Making points of like if people make good optimizations, making sure that the org knows about this, like, so it's not just squirreled away. It's like we want to celebrate this. I think Datadog do something similar where you've got communal Slack channels where like these things are kind of celebrated, and one of our organization values is we say thank you. We do want to recognize people for the work that they do. Even for something as fairly banal or boring as cost can be, because you're right, engineers are like, why should I care about that? Which, to loop back around to turning things into a metric, if it's something that can be improved upon, I'm not saying you gamify it, but you kind of want to get that mindset where like you want to improve it and forget about the fact that it's a dollar value, it's just something else that you can measure success within your teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's so we have a channel internally that celebrates performance, right? It's literally called Performance Wins, and the thing I've noticed, and this was not because somebody said you have to do it or whatever, is organically people just automatically say we did this performance improvement and it saved us X, right? It's just weird, organic thing that happened, and in some ways, like selling this stuff is great, but in like having engineers just discover this and just not treat it as specialists, something kind of magical that's happening.
Yeah, I think recently service catalog's been enhanced to show the service cost, which has been extremely helpful for me because engineering teams, if you talk about the overall bill or you talk about an AWS service or whatever it costs, it kind of gets like the conversation, not lost in translation, but the conversation doesn't have much point to the engineering team. Being able to visualize your service cost in something that the engineering team already looks at, that again, it almost gamifies it in a way because it's up there with like, the scorecard, the other things that they would measure success with. So it almost like, it does a bit of a Jedi mind trick of like, getting people caring about it subliminally almost. So yeah, and then it bakes in, and then ideally it becomes a product discussion that is almost like a non-functional requirement. Whether it's like an API response time, your cost efficiency also gets built in and becomes part of the process. And we've got buy-in from a lot of teams. Teams don't typically push back on things like this. They may just care about it a little less. But again, you see other teams adopting it and starting to take it really seriously, and you get a bit of healthy competition between the teams because team A is doing lots of good work and team B is like, hang on, these guys are getting recognized. And before you know it, they've created that competition amongst themselves about, okay, right, you've got an efficient service, but check it out, ours is half the cost of yours and just as efficient. So.
Yeah. There's another sort of thing a trend that seems to be happening, which is people start to use this the signal for a lot of uses that we hadn't actually thought about, like should we implement feature A or feature B? There's like interesting things you can start to do once you have this cost number available to every engineer. In fact, most of our savings have just come from engineers just looking at it. We have this. I think I'm gonna screw up the acronym for it, but it spells hello, but somehow it's like high efficiency, limited, like very lightweight optimizations, and it's substantial how much that the bottom line impact of that these sort of changes are, and there is no way we could centrally coordinate that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as well, because of the industry we work in, it's, margins are extremely important to, how we set our prices for markets, what the betting odds are, to maximize our bottom line. This is, again, it becomes another thing that lets, improve our net margin, just, bake it into the whole ecosystem. And yeah, we're getting there, but yeah, it takes time because, people need to go through the Kubler-Ross curve,
Yes.
Denial, anger, acceptance, because, some people do it really quickly, but some people, can take months, it can take longer, but it's human nature, and you've just got to be accepting of that. I think it would be a fallacy to sit here and say, yeah, we implemented cloud cost management and we've got that visibility now and things changed overnight. That's totally not like what will happen, but, we're seeing the needle move as things progress and more people become aware of it and more people are not getting excited about it. They're not me, right? I'm probably the only guy that gets excited at the org about looking at these things. But, it's definitely, I see teams now without, they don't need prompted by anyone or they don't need anything highlighted. They're naturally thinking of this. And I feel like we must be doing an okay job if teams are, going down that path themselves.
I mean, I would argue probably better than an okay job because it's the thing that nobody really wants to talk about, right? Like, who wants to talk about money going out? That's unpleasant.
Exactly. Just it's the cost guy again.
Yeah,
it's like my alter ego.
So one of the things that we've noticed quite a bit is just there is a different sort of cultural view where engineers feel a higher degree of ownership towards the products that they do than just strictly sticking with performance, right? And maybe that's a bit of a very biased perspective from the cost guy, but it does feel to me that people are owning the infrastructure that they have in a way that the pets versus cattle thing, where people don't really care about the stuff that they do. How are you seeing it sort of manifest in terms of a cultural perspective in the company?
The changes in how these things are advertised. It's like, again, while we have a small FinOps team, it would be another fallacy to say, oh yeah, just hire a couple of FinOps engineers and that will solve your spending problems as well. It's that's not what happens. But those guys, they can help you on your political campaign, like across the org, just making that change. But yeah, I have seen teams getting more into it. You see Confluent pages popping up with, oh, here's projected savings if we like migrate to this new architecture, because it's not just about, say downsizing, the instance family that you're in. I also look at it from the point of view, it's like, well, actually, should we look to migrate to newer instance families so we get a better price? But we might end up spending the same dollar value, but you've got a more performant application at the end of it, because you're staying current. I think sometimes there's a tendency for people to get comfortable with just, I'll just stay on an R4 instance and like RDS, and it's like, guys, that hardware's from like 2017. It's like that might as well be a million years ago. It's your workload can go here. So we might not, in some cases, we might not reduce the spend, but the money that we are spending is more valuable and ultimately has a better end user experience because the workload's more performant.
Yeah, again, like it keeps coming back to like it's the shift seems to be happening quite organically from just what used to be efficiency, which is a very nice way of saying you should spend less, to can we actually get more for the thing that you spend, right? Even in this specific case, it sounds like you actually ended up spending more in some ways, right? But you got more throughput out of it.
Yeah. Because sometimes you're going to have bottlenecks. Sometimes you can throw a lot of resource there, but you're still going to have bottlenecks. So, but yeah, I don't. We always want to kind of move forward and improve things rather than sticking with the status quo. It's culturally at FanDuel, things move quickly. It's a fast-moving industry, and say for instance, a new state permits betting, then it's kind of like a race to the finish line. Like 2 years ago, it might have taken us 2 weeks to build a new state and all the infrastructure and things that we needed. But we wanted to improve that. We wanted to improve that metric, which in turn improves cost because you've got to put less man hours into it, and the infrastructure's only there when we actually need it. So now we can do it like in a day or two. So there's it's not hidden cost savings, but the man hours that you get back. I think again, going back to the keynote today, there was talk about saving developer hours. I forget, was it the static analysis tool? Anyway, there was significant savings that developers, they get that time back to like focus on doing the more interesting stuff. So there's lots of parallels there.
So I mean, it sounds like you've kind of started this journey and have been doing FinOps for a while. Be curious, like what would you recommend somebody who's suddenly in 2023 looking at this whole thing and go, oh my God, how am I going to even start with this?
Yeah, I mean, like, our journey kind of just started by, oh, look, the bill's going up every month. What can we do about this? It was a very high level, can we get some explanations about this? And because I was interested anyway, and was looking at the Datadog things, because I guess we had similar problems in Datadog where we were spending quite a lot and perhaps not getting all the value that we should. Now we're still spending quite a lot of money with Datadog, but we're more confident that we're getting value from the features that we're using. But getting started, I mean, for me it was maybe I accidentally helped found the team just by being interested in it and looking for, I think, it's probably one of my natural things. I'm always like looking for efficiency. I think DevOps, I guess, the whole thing is like looking for efficiencies and making things run more smoothly, whatever it is. So there is a lot of crossover into FinOps. You've just got to kind of get past the fact that it's a boring subject and treated like something that's a bit more interesting. So if you're at an org that doesn't do FinOps, but you've got a fairly sizable cloud footprint, then show interest in it. There's not going to be that many people that show interest in it, right? So you can, I guess, captain the ship, like almost by accident.
There's another thing I think you sort of mentioned in the passing, but I feel like it's worth digging a little into is tagging and how important tagging is and how hard it is to tag things correctly.
Yeah, I mean, we have tens of thousands of AWS resources, right? So, and having that many, it means that it's quite an extensive operation. But what we'll find is that probably 80% of our cost base is generated by like maybe 10 or 20% of the things. So you can get to a fairly good level of accountability and visibility of who's spending the money fairly quickly. It's just that last like 20%. There's a Scottish saying talking about painting the Forth Bridge, which is like a big bridge outside Edinburgh. It's like you paint it, you get to one end, and then you have to go back and start it all over again. And like, tagging could be like that because we keep spinning up new resources. But again, we're looking to improve it. We've got teams who are working towards putting guardrails in to make sure that future resources are tagged appropriately so that we never, have to paint the bridge again and go back and do the work all over again. But yeah, I can't overstate just how important it is, because you start digging into costs, and then the natural follow-up question is, okay, right, we're starting to understand the costs, but who is generating the costs? And that'll be like question number 2 that you get from your CFO or whoever's looking at the big numbers.
I hate to interrupt, but is there anything else you would like to say on the topic before we move to the audience Q&A?
No, I think we could talk about
wonderful
questions.
So I thought this was an interesting question. In your experience, when you're starting out to optimize cost, what's more important? Where would you start, software or hardware?
Personally, I would probably look at hardware. I think that's probably an easier problem to solve, like, identifying workloads that are running on over-provisioned hardware. I think sometimes it can be, again, it goes back to, if you're looking at the software, your conversations at the start can be kind of tricky, I think, because if you're saying, hey, you don't have a very efficient workload, you immediately put the team on the back foot and they get a bit defensive about it. Whereas, looking at hardware in AWS and it's an easy change, right? So you can just go from a 4x large to 2x large. So I would definitely start with hardware, but I think it then naturally evolves, of course, because as you start right-sizing, it sometimes becomes a bit easier to spot where your software bottlenecks are located, and then that gives the engineering teams a target to go after, rather than just saying, oh, can you just check that the API is fine? It's like, of course it seems fine. Give me a specific target. It needs to be. So yes, to shorten my answer, hardware.
Yeah, I think our experience has been. Maybe I'll make this question more complicated and add there's a peopleware aspect to it as well, right? I mean, because you're balancing people's attention and time with maybe measured in engineering hours, which is also related to software, and then hardware refreshes seem easy at the start, but very quickly you end up in this sort of cyclical loop, and ideally moving in the right direction where hardware refreshes, is focused on specific bottlenecks which get fixed, and then that makes generally life easier for engineers who have to troubleshoot less over time.
Following up on that, engineers are capable of cramming an incredible amount of code in 100 bytes. So you see these code golf challenges, that sort of thing. How do you balance efficiency with maintainability?
Good question. It is tough. I like to think I've built up decent relationships working with the teams, because I always say to them when I sort of open up cost conversations, if I've not spoken with them before, it's like, look, this isn't about you spending less money. This is making sure that we're getting the maximum value. I always try and make it clear that it's not just about the dollar bottom line, because otherwise you get into that defensive posture again, and you don't really make much progress with it. Because I'm always like, we're not looking to compromise your workloads in any way. That's like not our goal at all. So Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's a politician's answer I'm giving here, but you have to kind of be a bit of a politician, I think. But as long as the teams, I think, are clear about what the objective is here and that you're not purely looking at saving money for the sake of saving money, then I think it kind of naturally follows that people aren't going to do things that might, impact your uptime or your performance levels.
Yeah, I mean, it is an unfortunate side effect of the sort of we're having a nice number and a target to chase, and sometimes, but it's ultimately having good SLOs help. And learning that's a balance between the iron triangle of cost, quality, and speed. I mean, somehow to find the right balance for your particular application.
Yeah.
How do you approach costs from different platforms or third parties that Datadog can't ingest?
I leave that to the finance guys. Is the joke answer, but it's something that we're trying to change. We had a conversation yesterday on the roadmap for cloud cost management, and I think there is a feature coming where we can visualize those other costs that currently are not in Datadog, because what we find is when we're budgeting, we think about the AWS number, we think about the Datadog number, and a few others, and then someone will pop up and go, "Oh, remember we're using this as well." And then you end up with these convoluted spreadsheets that have got lots of tabs and lots of rows, and it's not particularly elegant. So we're kind of hoping that we can leverage a forthcoming feature to make that more visible. Again, going back to my earlier point about we've got so many Datadog users, so it'll be familiar to people, so it'll be visible rather than just in a spreadsheet that is shared amongst a select few. But yes, it's a problem we've not currently solved because we're still in spreadsheet mode. But yeah, we'll hopefully get there in the next quarter or so.
Can you elaborate more on the structure of the FinOps team? So what would be the minimum to make it successful? Is it full-time folks? Is it part of engineering? Just how is it mechanically structured?
At FanDuel, so like I manage a couple of teams. I manage the FinOps team and a separate SRE team. But we have a couple of dedicated FinOps engineers. Certainly, I've been asked a few times, it's like, do you need any more engineers to do this? I think it would be another fallacy to think, oh, if we hire a dozen FinOps engineers, that will fix all our problems, because you've still got to work on that culture change where like engineering as a whole are thinking about it. Having a bunch of FinOps engineers just being authoritarian about it and saying you need to do this, you need to do that, it's just going to create animosity, I think. So I would definitely start with a small, I hate to use the word tiger team, but like a small team that moves quickly, shows some initial results, and then just, I guess, keep it small, because as you go through the journey of getting engineering teams on side, then they almost become sort of pseudo FinOps engineers themselves because they're thinking about it. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't go down the route of hiring a really large team unless you're in a gigantic organization that structurally a big team would work.
Yeah, I think we do the same thing at Datadog. It's a very small team of people. There's a couple of advantages of having the team sort of almost forcing prioritization a little bit in terms of and building that culture inside out. And it's in some ways like you want to push your systems to do work harder, right? You don't want to just hire an army of people to throw at the problem, because that's not as effective as.
No, for sure.
Do you have any advice for getting engineers to stop over-focusing on costs that are part of their problem domain, but may not be a big problem for the organization?
Interesting. That's not a problem that we've run into, but it's a really good question, because I think people sometimes they will go down the rabbit hole and they'll start over focusing on like the little things rather than looking at the bigger picture. I guess we're fortunate that we've not had that issue, but I totally get how that could happen quite quickly. To be honest, I probably sometimes do it myself, where I'm a bit like a dog with a bone. There'll be like an area where I think we can make savings, and naturally I want to refine that to the nth degree. But thankfully that's a me problem, not an org problem. And like I kind of recognise that I'm doing it sometimes. But yeah, sorry, don't have any magic advice, unfortunately, on that one.
I don't know if this helps, but it's like, one, it's probably a great problem to have, to be honest, if you're there. But the other thing that actually helps is periodically going back to the context of why you're doing these things, right? And I think a lot of times projects fixate on a particular benchmark or a number, and the goal is to optimize the number and not get to the goal. 100% is not always the right answer.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this, which is let the finance team deal with it. But how do you deal with vendors that have usage-based billing models, but poor spend and usage data sets to go along with them?
Yeah, we let the finance team deal with it. I mean, we're lucky that we've got a good team there, and I guess with FanDuel being the size we are, there's usually negotiating room, and we managed to barter for better price points. I've realised not everyone's going to be in that privileged a position, but yeah, that's kind of out of my hands. There's probably an argument that I should be more involved with it, but for the moment, it is kind of left to the procurement team, who basically deal with contracts and that kind of across the board at the organisation. I guess it would be a bit odd, I think, to move some of the contracting stuff to the FinOps team. I think it would probably distract us from, because FinOps itself, I guess, can be quite dry to some people, but contracts and things like, when I see these things going back and forth, that's, you've got legal involved in it, that can get very dry very quickly.
All right, I think this will probably be the last question, but how do you build budgets?
In spreadsheets. Yeah, like I wish there was a better way, how long's Excel been around? 25, 30 years, and we're still using it for budgets. Yeah, we're gonna make a better stab at it this year. I think as well, what's been tricky for FanDuel specifically with budgets is that as we've grown and, with sports being seasonal, it's difficult to predict where things will be next year. There's lots of variables that we have to bake in, like, which states are going to potentially legalize sports betting, right? And then that could be a number, but then it may prove to be more popular, so we need to deploy more resources. So yeah, it's a timely question. We're actually projecting the budget next week, so I could probably give you a better answer in about a week and a half. But yeah, it's frustrating that, and what I will say as well is we never hit the budget. We project and we think this is what we're going to spend, but then things happen. Things, whether it's organically or naturally. There might be a product you're not using today, and you can't predict that in 6 months' time you're going to want to use that. So I guess it will depend on the org that you're at, how strict people are with budgets, but like we use it as like almost like a guideline to, it's like, right, okay, this is where we think we'll be, but if we go over, as long as we can demonstrate that we've got that metric to show that we're getting value, we can square away that we've gone over the budget. If you don't end up in a scenario where you can't explain an overspend on a budget, or it appears that you've got lots of waste, because that is definitely a tricky conversation with your CFO or whoever looks after the number. But yeah, hopefully one day it won't be on a spreadsheet. It'll be done. And can Datadog build something? I don't, add it to cloud cost management. I don't see why not. Forecasting could work for some things, because we've got seasonality. There are products that we could have a fairly well predicted spend level based on seasonality, and we could forecast that out. So yeah, we can definitely improve there.
So if you have requests like Niel's, I strongly recommend people check out Kayla's session at 5:30. Where you should ask her about a budget.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for the great conversation.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.